Hello, welcome once again to another supply chain management lecture by Dr. Ifeyunwe and Ukafo. Today we are going to be discussing supply planning and shipment scheduling. We are going to be discussing supply planning and shipment scheduling. Section objectives. It is expected that at the end of this class, you should be able to describe the steps that are involved in supply planning and also the purpose of supply planning. You should be able to identify the data that are necessary for calculating annual commodity supply requirements, the sources of this data, their possible limitations, and some possible remedies for those limitations. Should also be able to demonstrate the use of supply chain pipeline software as a resource for supply planning and scheduling and shipment tracking. In our previous section, our previous lecture, we started discussing quantification process. And we said that quantification can simply be defined as a process of forecasting and supply planning. You can simply define quantification as a process of forecasting and supply planning. And in that lecture, we also mentioned the steps that are involved in supply and quantification. And we said we have 3 steps that are involved in quantification. The first step being preparation step, the second step, quantification step, and the third step, supply planning. And we said that during preparatory phase of quantification, that it is your duty as a program manager to assemble your quantification team, make them to understand the purpose of the program, everything about the program, the extent of the quantification, the scope of the quantification. And it is also at this stage that you need to gather the data that you will need for your forecasting and supply planning. It is at this preparatory phase that you need to gather the data that you will need for your forecasting and supply planning. And then the second stage of quantification, which is forecasting, we simply defined it as estimating the quantity of goods that a particular program will use within a specified period of time in the future. And we said for you to do your forecast, you need your forecasting assumptions, and also you need data, the data that you have gathered during the preparatory phase. And we said this data can be, number one, consumption data, demographic data, mobility data, and service data. Using these 4 different data, you can also calculate your forecasted quantities using 4 different methods that we discussed in the last lecture. Again, we also said that the third step of quantification is supply planning. So today we are going to take a closer look at supply planning. And it is time for us to organize plan for the supply of the goods that we have forecasted previously. And at this stage, we also need to do what? Prepare for procurement and delivering of these goods. Note that the final step of quantification process entails developing a supply procurement plan. The final step of quantification process involves developing a supply procurement plan. And the quantities to procure have been decided upon. You remember during forecasting, you had quantity that you have forecasted. And now it is time to plan our shipping schedule to ensure that our system is stocked between minimum and maximum stock level. Remember, our purpose is to serve our customer rights. We don't want to disappoint our customer at any point in time. So, and for us to do that, we must always have goods in our facility within minimum and maximum stock level. Also, during supply plan, negotiating with procurement agents, suppliers, and manufacturers is also part of supply planning processes. And also, the quantification process does not end with the development of supply plan. There are also continuous pipeline monitoring. After you have done everything, you need to continuously monitor, to ensure that shipments arrive as planned. And also, if there is any adjustment that should be made, that should also be made on time to avoid stockouts. Now, let us define supply planning. What is supply planning? Supply planning is a planning process which estimates the total commodity requirement and costs for the program, and also guides procurement. Supply planning is a planning process which estimates the total commodity requirements and costs for the program and guides for procurement. Now, there are purposes, there are reasons why we do supply planning. Developing a good workable supply plan helps program managers to, one, enter and track forecasted consumption data, identify funders and funding commitments by products, identify suppliers for each product, coordinate timing of funding commitments and procurement, schedule shipment according to procurement lead times, supplier lead times, stock level income sheet to maintain stock levels between the established maximum and minimum levels, and to avoid stockout or losses due to overstocking and expiring. Remember that as important part of this is availability of funds. At the end of the day, the amount to be procured depends on the amount of funds that we have. Now, there are 5 steps that are involved in supply planning. There are 5 steps that are involved in supply planning. They are organize and analyze data. This is similar with what we have, the first step in forecasting. But the data we use at each step is slightly different. The first step in supply planning is organize and analyze data. The second step will build supply plan assumptions. The third, estimate total commodity requirements. The third, develop supply plan. The fifth, compare costs to available funding. Compare costs to available funding. Okay? Let us now take a closer look at how much will we get and when. How much we will get and when. Remember when we are discussing forecasting, we asked the question, do we really need to procure exactly the quantity that we have forecasted? And our answer was no. We said no. Because during forecasting, there are things we did not take into account. So during this period of supply planning, we are going to look closely at those things and see how it will help us to adjust our forecasted quantity so that we will arrive at the exact quantity that we need to procure. Now, remember the first step is to organize and analyze our data. So we need to obtain this data from somewhere. The data that is needed for supply planning process, the data, you get the data from one, logistic management information system data, and you obtain data like maximum stock level, stock on hand, quantities on order, product wastage, and lead time. The first data source for supply planning process is data from logistic management information system. And the data we get from this source are maximum stock level, stock on hand, quantities on order, product wastage, and lead time. Another data source is product types, the type of product that you want to procure. The data that you need to get, you need to know the registration status of the product. You need to verify that the products are on the National Essential Medical List. And you need to know the specific product characteristics. The next thing you need to do is to get your suppliers. And the data you need to get from your suppliers are the price of the product. You need to get the price list, the prices of the product you want to procure, the packaging information, lead time, shipping and handling costs. At this stage, you need to get data at the prices of the products, the packaging information, lead time, shipping / handling costs. Another information data source is the funding, amount and timing of fund commitments. Funding disbursement schedules need to be known. Then procurement. You need to know all procurement mechanism options available to you. Lead times for each mechanism must be known. And then the next data source is distribution. You need to look at the distribution process. You know the custom clearance fees, in-country storage, and distribution costs, and testing costs. And then you look at the stock status of the facility where you are. The current stock on hand, you should know. The program maximum and minimum level, you should know. The product consumption and expiring dates and quantity on order must be known at this stage. You need all this data handy to enable you to do a proper supply plan. When you have finished, gathering this data I have mentioned, the next thing you do is to build supply plan assumptions, just like we did when we are doing forecasting. You do what? Build supply plan assumptions. And some of the assumptions are timing of available funds, amount of available funds, lead time for each supplier, arrival date of supplies. You need to know, you need to assume these things. You need to build assumptions around these things I'm mentioning. You need to know minimum and maximum stock level for each level in the system. Minimum and maximum stock level for each level in the system. And also the inflation rates, very, very important. Also inflation rates. You don't want something that you finish, by the time you finish your forecasting, supply planning, and you're ready to do your ordering, the prices of goods that change. So you need to build this into your assumption so that you have a smooth process. When you have finished building your supply plan assumptions, the next thing you do is to estimate total commodity requirement. Total commodity requirement. Let us have a closer look at this. Remember, during our, we are still on quantification process. So what we are handling now, supply planning, is part of quantification process. It is the third step in the quantification process. So we have already done with the first step, which is preparatory step, the preparation, and then the second step, which is the forecasting. We've done with that. So in this supply planning process, we are looking at the third step in supply planning, which is estimating program requirement. Now, how do we do this? You remember very well, we have already done forecasting. So we have forecasted quantity that we obtained when we did our forecasting. We have what we call forecasted quantity. So we get this, our quantification team will do what? Get this forecasted quantity. And then remember, one of the things we do when we are doing supply planning process is to do what? Gather our data. We said it earlier. You gather data from logistic management information system, such data like maximum stock level, stock on hand, quantity on order, and all that. So what do? When we want to estimate program requirement proper, remember we said earlier that the amount that we forecasted, is not actually the amount we must procure. This is because forecasted amounts did not take into consideration the maximum stock level of the facility. It didn't take into consideration the stock on hand or quantities on order. So at this supply planning process, supply planning stage, what we do is that we get that's our forecasted quantity, and then we add maximum stock level to the forecasted quantity. We add maximum stock level quantities to the forecasted quantity. The forecasted quantity is obtained when we did our forecasting. If you remember the formulas we used and the data we use, consumption data, mobility data, demographic data, service data, we use that to do our forecast. And we obtain a figure. So it is that figure now that you will bring at this stage. You add maximum stock level quantity to this figure. And the next thing you do, you subtract stock on hand and then subtract quantities on order. When you have done that, you now arrive at program requirement. Let us look at it closely. If you look at this particular slide now, we have how much do we really need? There are certain information that you obtain from your logistic management information system. Like I said, maximum stock level. average monthly consumption. Average monthly consumption, stock on hand, quantity on order. So determining program requirement uses this formula. But data like maximum stock level is gotten from your system. Average monthly consumption is gotten from your logistic management information system. And then stock on hand and quantity on order. You must have this information ready. And then you now get your forecasted quantity. Forecasted quantity. If you go back with what we did last time, we had our forecasted quantity as 836,556. 835,556. Okay? Now, what do we do next? Information data that is provided for us from our logistic management information system and maximum stock level, we have 8 months. Average monthly consumption, we have 1,000. Stock on hand, we have 10,000. Quantity on order, we have 5,000. So if our forecasted quantity from our previous forecasting is 835,556, what do? We calculate, next thing we do is to do what? Calculate our maximum stock level quantity. And we calculate our maximum stock level quantity. The formula is maximum stock level times average monthly consumption gives us the maximum stock level quantity. In this slide, our maximum stock level is 8 months. That is, our facility can only store at a particular time the amount of goods that will last us for 8 months. That is maximum stock level that we can have at any point in time. The maximum we can have at any point in time. The amount of goods that will last us for what? 8 months. So in this slide, the maximum stock level is 8 months. The average monthly consumption, that is the amount that will consume monthly for that particular product, is 1,000. Remember, all this information can get them from what? The logistic management information system records, issue data, and all that. Now, when you get your maximum stock level quantity by multiplying maximum stock level times average monthly consumption, what do you have? You have, that is, you have 8 times 1,000. That gives us what? 8,000. That gives us 8,000. So the next thing you do is you add the 8,000 to your forecasted quantity. And when you do that, you have the total forecasted amount now will now be what? 843,556. Now the next thing you do is what? Minus stock on hand. Our stock on hand here is 10,000. So we minus stock on 10,000. When we do that, we also subtract quantity on order. Our quantity on order here is 5,000. When we subtract 5,000, then we now arrive at program requirement. So when we subtract, what we now have now is 826,000, 828,556. 828,556. 828,556. So the program requirement, that is the amount that we actually need to procure. That is the amount that we actually need to procure. Remember, the steps involve, you have data that you must get, that must be provided for you, or you get them from the logistic management information system records. We have your maximum stock level. You have the average monthly consumption, stock on hand, and quantity on order. So you add your maximum stock level quantity to your forecasted quantity, and then you subtract stock on hand, and then you subtract quantity on order. You now arrive at program requirement, the amount you need to procure for the program, okay? Let us look at another example. In your workbook, this is there, and I hope you will solve it with me. Feel free to ask any question, drop it on the chat box. I will be glad to get back to you promptly. Now, let us look at this closely, this question closely. And it says, you have just completed your forecast for microscopic slides. Before you make your procurement plans, you need to take into consideration maximum stock levels, stock on hand, and quantities on order. Your forecast for consumption for the next 12 months is 120,000 slides. That's what you obtained when you did your forecast for slide. Now, your average monthly consumption is 10,000 slides per month. Here are the parameters for your program. The parameters as you get from your facility, you have maximum stock level, 9 months, stock on hand, 30,000 slides, quantities on order, 5,000 slides. Now the question number 1 says, given these parameters, what quantity of slides is estimated to be needed for the next 12 months? What quantity of slides is estimated to be needed for the next 12 months? That's the first question. The second question says, hypothetically, a slide is 1,000 naira. What is the cost of slides required? What is the cost of slides required? So let us see how we can solve this particular problem. I hope you will be solving it, with me. Let's see if we can arrive at the answer together. Remember the steps. The first step, you need to calculate the maximum stock level quantity. And how do we do this? The maximum stock level quantity is calculated by multiplying the average monthly consumption times the maximum stock level. And in the question, this question provided, the average monthly consumption for the microscopic slide is 10,000 slides per month. And the average the maximum stock level is 9 months. So calculating the maximum stock level quantity is 10,000 times 9. That gives us what? 9,000. The next step is what? We need to add our forecast to the maximum stock level quantity. From the question provided, the forecasted amount for the microscopic slide is 120,000 slides. So what do we do here? We add 120,000 plus 90,000. That gives us 210,000. The next thing we do what? We subtract stock on hand. The amount of slides that are on hand from the question provided is 30,000 slides. So we subtract 30,000 from 210,000, and we're having what? 180,000. The next step is to subtract quantity on order. The quantity on order from the question provided is what? 5,000. So we subtract 5,000 from 180,000, and we arrive at program requirement, which is what? 175,000 slides. So the amount of slides we need to procure at this point in time is what? 175,000 slides. Remember, the second question there is that we should also find the amount needed to procure this quantity of slides. And the costing formula, for us to calculate that, there's a formula for that. And the formula said that forecasted program requirement times the unit cost gives us what? The estimated cost for the forecasted program requirement. That is the forecasted program requirement times the unit cost gives us the amount needed to procure the estimated quantity. Let us answer the question 2 now. The question 2 says, hypothetically, if a slide is 1,000 naira, what is the cost of slides that are actually required? What is the cost of the slides required? From the formula that we have just stated before, determining the cost of program requirement, we use this particular formula, the forecasted program requirement. From our calculation, the program requirement for microscopic slide is what? 175,000 slides. And we are told that the unit price is what? 1,000 naira. So when we multiply 175,000 slides times 1,000 naira, we have the amount that we need to procure the amount of slide that is needed for the program. And the amount is what? 175 million naira. The amount needed to procure the slides for the program at this point in time is what? 175,000 naira. I hope you are following me. I don't know if you have any challenge so far. If you have any challenge, please feel free to drop it the comment section. I will get back to you. Let us also look at another example from what we forecasted earlier in our previous class. The amount that we forecasted is 828,556, if you remember. And the unit cost is provided here, is 290 naira. So the total amount needed to procure this amount of goods is the amount forecasted times the unit cost, giving us 2,402,812 naira 40 kobo. Okay, this is another example. Now we have estimated the total cost of the commodity that is required. We have estimated the total commodity requirements. The next thing that we need to do is to develop a supply plan. Next thing we need to do is to do what? Develop a supply plan. So developing a good supply plan helps managers, it helps program managers to remember what we said earlier, to enter and track forecasted consumption data. It helps program managers to identify funders and funding commitments and procurement. It helps program managers to schedule shipments according to procurement lead time, suppliers lead time, and stock level in country to maintain stock level between maximum and minimum level. When we finish developing our supply planning, we need to do compare costs to available funding. Remember we said earlier that no matter what you do, everything boils down to the amount of fund, amount of money available for you to do what? To procure the goods. If you finish forecasting and arriving at the cost that you need and the amount that you need, but you don't have the required funds, that means you need to go back or do something else. We'll look at that in a few seconds. Okay? When we finish forecasting, when we finish estimating the actual program requirements, when we finish calculating the exact amount needed to actually procure what we have estimated, we will now ask, do we have the required fund? Do we have enough money to procure what we have estimated? If yes, then we go ahead and procure. If yes, we go ahead and procure. If no, we need to do what? mobilize for more funds. If we finish estimating the amount that we need to procure the goods, and then we look inside our facility, we don't have enough funding, then the next thing for us to do is to do what? Mobilize for more funding. Is it that we look for donors, more donors that will help us, support the program to help us procure the needed products, and we source for funding within either internally or externally to help us procure the estimated products. But in a situation where we are not able to mobilize more funds, what do we do? When we are not able to mobilize more funds, then we need to go back and adjust our forecasting assumptions. We need to go back, adjust our forecasting assumptions, and do the forecasting again, and to do the whole supply planning process again to arrive at another estimated cost, which we can afford at that point in time. Okay? Ways to adjust quantities to procure. There are ways to adjust quantities to procure. We can look at stock at hand in the country. We can look at quantities on order, other funding that may be available. We can look at other funding, means that may be available to us and explore them. Okay? When more funding may become available, we should also check whether the funding is obligated to certain products, and also new policies or anticipated changes in the program. And we should also note the program priorities. We should also know the program priorities. Then other considerations that will help us adjust forecasted quantities. Other considerations that can also help us to adjust forecasted quantities are available storage space. You need to ask yourself, does the central level warehouse have enough storage capacity to handle all the quantities needed? Because it makes no sense if you order for this product, but you don't have a conducive environment to store them. Some of them that are temperature regulated, you need to put that into consideration. Human resources. Are there enough trained personnel to manage the products? You need to look at your human personnel. If you don't have enough human personnel to manage the product, that means you have to do what? Look at your forecasting assumptions again and then revert. Transportation. Transportation. Is there enough dedicated transport to get the products to where they need to go? You need to consider all this. Available storage space, human resources, and transportation. Supply plan summary. Supply planning, as we have discussed, are broken down into stages, like planning, execution, and shipping. Planning, execution, and shipping. And all this takes into consideration the physical status of the goods, the shipment quantities, and delivery schedules, the use of pipeline software at central level come into play here. Then the management of the materials and financial information involving all parties. Financial information involving all parties. I don't know whether you have any question at this stage. We have come to the end of today's section. Remember, we talked about supply planning as the third step as involved in quantification process. And we said at this stage, you need to do what? Organize your data, You obtain your data from logistics system information management system, from your product suppliers, data like the price, the suppliers. You look at the products you want to procure. Is it listed in the essential medical list in the country? The expiring date? Gather all this information at this stage, and then you organize that information, build supply planning assumptions, and then you estimate the total requirement for the program, product needed for the program. And how do we do that? We just finished discussing that you get your forecasted quantity, which you obtain when you did your forecasting, and then you get your maximum stock level quantity by multiplying your maximum stock level times the average monthly consumption, and then you add it to your forecasted quantity. And you do what? You subtract stock at hand, quantity, and order. Once you have done that, you now arrive at the exact amount needed for the program, the exact program requirement. But you need to convert it to unit cost, how much that is actually needed. So if the unit cost of procuring such a product is 1,000 naira, you do what? You multiply this unit cost with the total forecasted quantity. That gives you the amount of money that you need to do what? To procure your goods. And when you finish this, next thing you continue your planning, because you actually need to procure. You have gotten the amount you need. So you have to look inwards. Now, do I have this money that I have actually estimated? If you have it, you go ahead and procure. If you don't, you do what? You mobilize for more funding by asking for either internal support or external support. And when you do that, when you are not able to mobilize funding, you look at what? Forecasted assumption again, and try to do the whole process again to arrive at the amount that you can actually procure at that point in time. Remember, at the end of the day, the amount that we procure depends on the available resources. Thank you very much for being part of this lecture. I have actually enjoyed myself. I don't know, I believe that you did. Feel free to ask questions, and I will be glad to get back to you. I want to say a very big thank you to USAID for their support, and also Supply Chain Management System Nigeria. Thank you very much for all you do to help us bring supply chain management to our students in all universities in Nigeria. Thank you very much, and thank you. Thank you, and thank you.